1946, the war was over. The world was breathing a collective sigh of relief as the shadows of conflict began to recede. Cities were rebuilding, families were reuniting, and a sense of hope was in the air. A new world was being born. Skyscrapers began to pierce the sky, and the hum of industry filled the streets. The American dream was being redefined with promises of prosperity and peace. But in the shadows, a different kind of power was growing. Away from the bright lights and bustling avenues, in the dimly lit alleyways and smoky backrooms, another world thrived. A world where the rules were different and power was taken, not given. Gene Gotti entered this world. Born into a modest apartment in New York, his cries mingled with the distant sounds of a city that never slept. His birth was unremarkable to the world, but within certain circles it was significant. He was born into the Gambino family, a name that carried weight, a name that commanded respect and fear. The Gambinos were not just a family, they were an institution in the underworld, a dynasty of crime. It wasn't a family of love, it was a family bound by blood and loyalty, but also by violence and power. The warmth of familial love was often overshadowed by the cold, hard reality of their world. It was a family of crime, from petty thefts to grand heists, from protection rackets to cold-blooded murders. The Gambinos were involved in it all. Crime was their business, and business was booming. The streets of New York were his classroom. Violence was his teacher. The lessons were harsh, and the curriculum was unforgiving. Every corner, every alleyway, every shadow held a lesson in survival. Loyalty to the family was everything. Betrayal meant death. In this world, trust was a rare commodity, and loyalty was the currency that mattered most. To betray the family was to sign your own death warrant. Gene learned these lessons young. He had no choice. From a tender age, he was exposed to the harsh realities of his family's business. Innocence was a luxury he could not afford. His older brother John was already a rising star in the Gambino family. Gene idolized John. To him, John was not just a brother, but a mentor, a guide, a beacon in the dark world they inhabited. He followed him into the darkness. He embraced the life. The allure of power, the sense of belonging, the thrill of danger, it all drew him in. He was destined to walk the same path. He became a soldier in the Gambino army. A soldier in a war that was fought not on battlefields, but in the streets, in the shadows, in the very heart of the city. A war where the stakes were high and the rules were few. John Gotti, the Teflon Don, he was charismatic, he was ruthless, he was a legend. Gene walked in John's shadow. He was a loyal soldier, he was a trusted enforcer, he was feared, he was respected. The brothers climbed the ranks of the Gambino family. Their power grew, so did their wealth. They controlled unions, they ran gambling rings, they trafficked drugs, they were untouchable. Or so they thought. The FBI was watching. They were building their case. They were waiting for their moment. The net was closing in. The 1980s. The streets were flooded with drugs, cocaine, crack, heroin. The Gambino family saw an opportunity. They seized it. Gene became a major player in the heroin trade. He was making millions. He was living the high life. But the serpent of addiction was coiling around him. It was a dangerous game. The stakes were high. The penalties were even higher. Gene didn't care. He was invincible. He was a Gotti. He was above the law. But he was wrong. The law was coming for him. The feds had their evidence, wiretaps, informants. They were ready to move. In 1989, the hammer came down. Gene was arrested. He was charged with racketeering. He was charged with drug trafficking. He was facing a lifetime in prison. The trial was a media circus. The prosecution was relentless. They painted Gene as a ruthless criminal, a monster, a menace to society. The jury believed them. Gene was found guilty. He was sentenced to 50 years. His world came crashing down. He was going to spend the rest of his life behind bars. Section 5, a cage of concrete and steel. Prison was a harsh reality. The cold, unyielding walls of his cell were a stark contrast to the life he once knew. The echo of footsteps in the corridors, the clanging of metal doors, and the ever-present sense of confinement were constant reminders of his new reality. Gone were the days of luxury, the days when he could command the finest things in life with just a snap of his fingers. The opulent mansions, the high-end restaurants, and the luxury cars were now distant memories, replaced by the stark and unforgiving environment of the prison, of power, of respect. The gatherings with powerful mobsters, the whispered conversations in dimly lit rooms, and the respect he commanded in the criminal underworld were all part of a past life that seemed almost unreal now. Gene was just another number. Stripped of his identity, he was reduced to a mere prisoner number, lost in the sea of inmates who shared the same fate. The mugshot taken upon his arrival was a stark reminder of his fall from grace. Another inmate in a system designed to break you. The crowded prison yard, the endless rows of inmates behind bars, and the harsh environment were all part of a system that seemed intent on breaking the spirit of those it held captive. He spent the next 29 years behind bars. 29 long years where each day felt like an eternity. The calendar pages flipped, marking the passage of time, but for Gene, it felt as though time had stood still. He watched the world outside change. From the small window of his cell, he saw the city skyline evolve, the urban landscape transform, and the world move on without him. Major events came and went, each one a reminder of the life he was missing out on. He saw his family torn apart, the emotional family visits, the distressed faces of his loved ones, and the torn family photos were all painful reminders of the impact his imprisonment had on those he cared about. He felt the sting of betrayal. The handshake that once symbolized trust now felt like a dagger in his back. The emotional reactions of betrayal were a constant source of pain, a reminder of the fragile nature of loyalty. He lived with his regrets. The quiet moments of reflection in his cell were filled with thoughts of what could have been. The regretful expressions on his face told the story of a man who had made choices that led him down a path of no return, but he never broke the code. The Mafia code of silence, the loyalty oath he had taken, were principles he held on to with unwavering resolve. Even in the face of adversity, he remained stoic, never wavering in his commitment. He never cooperated with the authorities. The interrogation rooms, the relentless questioning, and the pressure to betray his comrades were all met with defiance. He refused to speak, maintaining his silence and his loyalty. He remained loyal to the Gambino family. The images of his family, the organized crime family he was a part of, were always in his mind. His loyalty to the Gambino family was unshakable, a bond that prison could not break. Even in prison, he was a force to be reckoned with. He was a Gotti. The respect he commanded, the influence he wielded, even behind bars, was a testament to his enduring power. He was not just another inmate. He was Gene Gotti, a name that still carried weight, even in the harshest of environments. Section 6. Whispers of a Ghost, Freedom and Speculation. In 2018, Gene Gotti walked out of prison a free man. After serving nearly 3 decades behind bars, the world he re-entered was vastly different from the one he had left behind. The streets, the people, the very essence of the city had transformed in ways he could scarcely imagine. The once bustling neighborhoods now bore the marks of time and change, and the faces that once recognized him were either gone or indifferent. He was 72 years old. Time had not been kind to him, and the years of incarceration had taken their toll. His once imposing figure was now frail, and the sharpness in his eyes had dulled. Yet there was a certain resilience in his demeanor, a quiet strength that spoke of the battles he had fought and the ones he had yet to face. He was a ghost from another era. The world had changed. The skyline of New York City, with its towering skyscrapers and bustling streets, was a stark contrast to the city he once knew. The digital age had taken over, and the old ways of doing things were now relics of the past. As he walked through the city, he couldn't help but feel like a stranger in his own home. The Gambino family was a shadow of its former self. The once powerful and feared organization had been decimated by law enforcement and internal strife. But whispers followed Gene. The streets buzzed with speculation and curiosity. People wondered if the old ways would return with his freedom. Would the Gambino family rise from the ashes, or was it destined to remain a ghost of its former glory? Would he try to rebuild the family? The question lingered in the air, a tantalizing possibility that kept the underworld on edge. Gene had the knowledge, the connections, and the legacy to attempt such a feat. But the world had changed, and the rules of the game were no longer the same. The digital age had brought new challenges and new players, and the old ways of the mob were now under constant scrutiny. Would he seek revenge on those who had betrayed him? The betrayals of the past were not easily forgotten, and the desire for retribution burned deep within him. The names and faces of those who had turned against him were etched in his memory, and the thought of settling old scores was a powerful motivator. But revenge was a dangerous game, and the consequences could be dire. No one knew for sure. The uncertainty was palpable, and the speculation ran wild. The media, the authorities, and the underworld all watched with bated breath, waiting to see what Gene's next move would be. The air was thick with anticipation, and the city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the ghost of the past to reveal his intentions. Gene kept his own counsel. He moved through the city with a quiet determination, avoiding the press and the prying eyes of the public. His actions were calculated, and his intentions remained a mystery. The man who had once been at the center of the underworld now operated in the shadows, a ghostly figure whose presence was felt but not seen. He faded from public view. The man who had once commanded attention and respect now slipped into obscurity. The city moved on, and the whispers of his return grew fainter. But for those who knew, the legend of Gene Gotti remained a powerful reminder of a bygone era. He became a ghost story, a figure of myth and legend whose name was spoken in hushed tones. The tales of his exploits and his rise to power were passed down like folklore, a chilling reminder of the power and the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of the city, a legend whispered in hushed tones. The stories of Gene Gotti and the Gambino family were told in secret, a part of the city's dark history that refused to be forgotten. The whispers carried a sense of awe and fear, a recognition of the power that once was and the potential for it to rise again. A chilling reminder of the power and the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of the city. The legacy of Gene Gotti and the Gambino family was a testament to the enduring allure of power and the shadows that it cast. The city, with its bright lights and towering buildings, held within it the echoes of a darker time, a time when men like Gene Gotti ruled the streets and the whispers of their deeds sent shivers down the spine. Section 7. The Gambino Dynasty, a legacy of blood and power. The Gambino family, one of the 5 families of New York City. A dynasty built on blood, on violence, on intimidation. They controlled the docks, they ran the unions, they infiltrated legitimate businesses, their reach was vast, their power was absolute, they were untouchable, or so they thought, but power is a dangerous game. It corrupts, it destroys, it leaves a trail of bodies in its wake. The Gambinos were no different. Their history is a tapestry woven with threads of greed, betrayal, and murder. Section 8. The Code of Silence. Omerta and the Mob. Omerta, the Code of Silence, the bedrock of the Mafia. Never talk to the cops, never betray your friends, never show weakness. It was a way of life, a matter of survival. To break Omerta was to sign your own death warrant. Gene Gotti lived by this code. He never cooperated with the authorities. He never betrayed his family. He served his time. He kept his secrets. He remained a mystery, a chilling enigma. Section 9. The allure and terror of organized crime. Organized crime, it has a seductive allure. The power, the wealth, the glamour, but behind the facade lies a world of brutality, of violence, of death. The mob offers a path to power, but it's a path paved with blood. It's a one-way street. Once you're in, there's no turning back. Gene Gotti understood this. He embraced it. He lived it. He paid the price. His story is a cautionary tale, a reminder that the allure of organized crime comes at a terrible cost. Section 10, Justice and Retribution. A life behind bars, 50 years. That was the price Gene Gotti paid for his crimes, a lifetime spent behind bars. He traded his freedom for power, he traded his soul for wealth. Prison is a harsh teacher, it strips you bare, it forces you to confront your demons, it makes you question everything you thought you knew. Gene Gotti learned this lesson the hard way. He served his time, he paid his debt to society, but the scars of his past remain, a haunting reminder of the choices he made. Section 11. The Unanswered Questions, a Chilling Legacy. Gene Gotti's story is a tragedy, a cautionary tale. A chilling reminder of the seductive power of organized crime. He was born into darkness, he lived in the shadows, he paid the price for his sins. But even in death, unanswered questions linger. What secrets did he take to the grave? What were his final thoughts? We will never know. Gene Gotti's story is a mystery, a puzzle with missing pieces, a chilling reminder that some secrets are best left buried.